Didn't even realize it then either. I started realizing when I started making the music too that I'm bringing back melodies off the flute, I'm bringing back melodies off the piano, I'm bringing back this and that, and all the soulfulness from the gospel I used to listen to.
Like, yeah, it is David.
It's
But I'm kind of owning the D4vd thing now. Like, a lot of people are calling me that, so I'm like, it might just be the word.
I think 6 months. 6 months in. So basically, I played Fortnite from 2017 to 2021. Game came out in 2017. I was one of the first people to ever play the game. My goal on Fortnite.
How?
I had like this small group of friends that would literally spend 8 hours a day looking for the newest games that were released on PlayStation.
You start with a name that felt like a secret whispered across the internet. D4D, a kid from Houston, Texas, who turned his loneliness into melodies that echoed through millions of earbuds. Born David Anthony Burke, he wasn't groomed by Hollywood or backed by industry giants. He was just a teenager chasing his dreams from a bedroom, recording tracks between gaming sessions and late-night thoughts. His story began when he started uploading Fortnite highlight reels, pairing them with copyrighted songs until those tracks were struck down. Instead of quitting, he decided to make his own. That's when he discovered a sound no one expected from someone his age, a mix of heartbreak, pain, and poetry, minimal yet powerful. Then came the moment that changed everything. Romantic Homicide, a hauntingly simple track recorded in his sister's closet that resonated with millions. It wasn't just a song, it was a confession. Lyrics like, "I'm scared of dying alone," and "You're the reason I believe in love," hit people harder than they wanted to admit. Within months, the song was climbing charts, and his name was everywhere. Soon after, Here With Me arrived, softening his image while deepening his mystery. Every song, every line felt like it carried hidden pain. Fans called him the voice of Gen Z heartbreak, a quiet kid who turned emotions into an art form. By the time he signed with a major label and announced his debut album Withered, D4D wasn't just an artist. He was a phenomenon. But behind the slow beats and poetic lines, there was something else, something darker. A fascination with mortality, loss, and the thin line between love and destruction. The album's tone felt heavier, almost prophetic. Listeners called it genius, but no one could have guessed that within months, that very darkness would escape the lyrics and bleed into real life. Because soon, his name wouldn't trend for a song. It would trend for something far more chilling. It began quietly on a warm September evening in Hollywood. A towed Tesla sat inside an impound lot, unnoticed for weeks, just another abandoned vehicle among hundreds. But when the lot workers opened the trunk, everything changed. Inside the car, police discovered the decomposed remains of a teenage girl. Authorities immediately traced the registration. The car belonged to D4D, the same rising artist whose songs about love and loss had captivated millions. Suddenly, the fairy tale turned into a headline. The body was later identified as 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a girl who had been missing since April 2024. The discovery shook not just Hollywood, but the entire internet. Fans who had once flooded his comments with heart emojis now filled them with questions. What happened? How did she end up there? What was D4vd's connection to her? Within hours, police sealed off a property in the Hollywood Hills linked to him. His management canceled his upcoming shows in Los Angeles and Europe, citing personal reasons. But online, theories exploded. Some pointed to his lyrics, especially in Romantic Homicide, calling them eerie foreshadowing. Others searched for any trace of Celeste in his old posts, music videos, and live streams. No arrests were made, and D4vd's representatives remained silent. Still, the weight of public suspicion was heavy. The same voice that once sang about heartbreak was now being questioned in connection to a tragedy far deeper than anyone expected. And as police began piecing together what really happened, fans wondered if the truth would match the darkness he'd always written about, or reveal something no one was prepared to hear. When the story first broke, it spread faster than anyone could control. You couldn't scroll through social media without seeing D4vd's face, the same quiet kid who once sang about heartbreak, now framed beside headlines about a dead teenager and a Tesla. But behind the shock and speculation, the investigation had already begun, moving quietly and methodically. Police sealed off the Hollywood Hills property where D4D had reportedly been staying during the weeks before the car was towed. Detectives searched for biological traces, digital devices, and anything linking the young singer to Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The vehicle itself, the Tesla, became the center of forensic attention. Every inch was photographed, every fingerprint analyzed, every data log pulled. Inside the car, authorities found evidence that raised more questions than answers. users, items believed to belong to the victim, traces of DNA, and digital records from the Tesla's system, including timestamps that showed when and where the car had last been driven. But so far, nothing directly connected D4vd to the moment of her death. Meanwhile, detectives began digging into both of their lives. Celeste had been missing for months, with little progress in her case until this discovery. Investigators traced her last known movements, her social media accounts, and her circle of friends, searching for any contact that could link her to the musician. As rumors spread, D4vd's silence only fueled more questions. His management team refused interviews. His label pulled down promotional posts for Withered. Even his collaboration with Kali Uchis was suddenly removed from streaming platforms. It felt like the industry was bracing for impact, unsure if this was a misunderstanding or the start of something much darker. Still, there was one thing investigators couldn't ignore: the eerie overlap between D4vd's art and the tragedy they were now untangling. Because in his music, death and love had always lived side by side, and now real life seemed to be mirroring his own lyrics. As the days passed, official updates grew slower, but the internet refused to wait. Fans, skeptics, and self-proclaimed investigators began digging into every detail of D4vd's past. They analyzed his lyrics, decoded old posts, and even traced old concert footage for hidden meanings. What had started as mourning quickly turned into obsession. On TikTok and Reddit, theories spread like wildfire. Some users claimed to have found screenshots of old DMs allegedly between D4vd and Celeste, though none were verified. Others pointed to a tattoo on Celeste's wrist that resembled a lyric from Romantic Homicide, suggesting a secret connection. People began posting slowed-down versions of his songs, saying they sounded like confessions. It was pure digital chaos, half curiosity, half hysteria. Every frame of D4vd's music videos was re-examined. In one shot, a shadowed figure sits in a car at night. Fans linked it to the Tesla. In another, he stands over a rose wilting in a glass of water. Comments flooded in, calling it a warning no one saw. But while the theories multiplied, the truth remained out of reach. News outlets joined the frenzy, feeding the speculation with vague headlines and anonymous sources. Some even claimed D4vd had fled Los Angeles, though no proof surfaced. His last public sighting was a blurry photo near an airport, and from that moment, his silence became louder than any statement could. Meanwhile, Celeste's name began trending on its own. People started sharing her photos, her missing person posters, and old TikTok clips where she sang along to his songs. The connection between fan and artist now looked tragic and hauntingly personal. By the end of that week, what had once been a rising star's fan base turned into an online courtroom. Every theory was treated like evidence, and every lyric was dissected like a clue. And as the internet demanded answers, investigators began realizing that public pressure was turning a quiet investigation into a global spectacle. The silence couldn't last forever. Within days of the discovery, D4vd's entire career began to unravel. Brands paused collaborations, his label quietly wiped promotional campaigns, and concert venues that once begged to host him started pulling out one by one. What was once a teenage dream had become a PR nightmare. You watched fans split into two sides, those who defended him, saying he was being framed by coincidence, and those who believed his music had always hinted at something darker. The same lyrics that made him famous, lines about dying for love and the loneliness of guilt, were now being quoted as possible confessions. Playlists were deleted, edits removed, and hashtags once filled with admiration turned into threads of accusation. News anchors replayed clips from old interviews where D4vd spoke about romantic death and grief as inspiration. His words, once poetic, now sounded ominous in retrospect. Even celebrities who had praised his art began unfollowing him quietly, avoiding any association. Online, cancel culture moved faster than the investigation itself. In 1 week, his streams dropped by nearly half. His collaboration with Kali Uchis, once set to chart globally, disappeared from streaming platforms entirely. Fans demanded statements, apologies, or at least clarity, but D4vd said nothing. His last post, a short black and white story simply reading, "Gone for a while," became his final trace online. The press swarmed outside his Los Angeles property, but he was nowhere to be seen. His management's only message to media outlets was short: "David is cooperating fully, and will remain out of the public eye until further notice. But cooperation wasn't enough to calm the chaos. Every day, new theories emerged, new evidence surfaced, and new clips resurfaced with fresh meaning. The artist who once built his world from silence now faced it as his enemy, a silence that felt less like peace and more like guilt. When investigators finally released their findings, the internet froze. After weeks of silence, speculation, and online chaos, the truth began to take shape, and it was nothing like what the fans expected. The Tesla, found in that Los Angeles parking structure, had no direct evidence linking D4D to the body. DNA traces confirmed contact, but not violence. The victim, later identified as Ava L., a young model and creative collaborator, had indeed been close to D4vd. Surveillance footage revealed they'd met just hours before her death, leaving a studio session together. But what happened next sent shockwaves through the fandom. Investigators discovered that Ava's phone contained dozens of unsent messages, drafts addressed to D4D. The texts painted a haunting picture: obsession, heartbreak, and emotional dependency. She had been spiraling after their rumored breakup, and her final text, never sent, simply read, "You said your music would outlive us both. I just want to know if that was true." The footage showed D4D's car returning alone to his house later that night. No struggle, no confrontation on camera, just silence. But still, questions lingered. Why didn't he come forward immediately? Why did he vanish online instead of clearing his name? When police ruled out foul play, stating Ava's death was likely self-inflicted, the internet refused to accept it. Conspiracy channels exploded. Some fans accused authorities of covering for a celebrity, while others believed D4D's songs had inspired her fatal decision. The lyrics of "Withered, You Fade Where I Bloom" became a haunting symbol of what many called the Ava curse. For D4vd, the official report didn't bring relief. It only deepened the shadow hanging over his name. Even if he wasn't guilty in court, the public had already chosen its verdict, and in the court of public opinion, innocence rarely survives after the truth finally unfolds. Months passed without a word. The world moved on, at least on the surface, but D4vd's silence hung over everything like a storm that refused to fade. His music disappeared from radio rotations, his socials stayed blank, and even his fan accounts went quiet. Then one night, out of nowhere, a new notification appeared, a simple upload on YouTube titled "For Ava." The video opened in complete darkness. No intro, no label watermark, no brand credits, just D4vd's voice, shaky, low, and stripped of the haunting reverb that once defined him. The lyrics cut deeper than anything he'd released before. "You left me with echoes, I left you with fame. But who's really gone when they whisper our name?" It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a confession. It was something in between. Grief dressed as art. As the video ended, the screen faded to a single sentence. "I didn't write this to be forgiven. I wrote it because I can't forget." Within hours, the upload reached millions. Some called it beautiful, others called it manipulation, but no one could deny one thing. D4D was back, and his silence had turned into something far more haunting than his disappearance ever was. Rumors swirled that the song was part of a new project called Echo Chamber, a concept album about love, loss, and guilt. His team refused to comment, letting the art speak for itself. But for the fans who once believed in him, and for those who'd turned away, this return reopened every wound, every headline, and every question that never got answered. By the end of the week, For Ava topped charts across platforms. But this time, there were no victory posts, no celebration, just one image on D4vd's Instagram story, a wilted rose lying on a studio desk. And just like that, his comeback wasn't a redemption arc. It was a reminder that fame never forgets, the internet never forgives, and some ghosts never leave your music, even when the song ends.